Hey, good morning and welcome to Breakthrough Walls. I'm Ken Walls and I'm your host. And you guys are going to love this one. I've got a rock star on the show today, Mr. Don Schin. If you don't know his name, you want to stick around. This is going to be amazing. Stay with us. Ladies and gentlemen, let me bring on Mr. Don Schin. Don, welcome to the show.
Hey Ken, how are you?
Dude, I'm really good, man. I'm excited to have you on. We met, what was it, about a month ago at the Jeffrey Gitomer, Joe Soto Mastermind. I can never remember the name of it. Is that bad? It's
Organized Acceleration.
That's it. There we go.
I abbreviated OAMM so many times that I forget what it is half the time too.
Don is Don, you're so many amazing things. You're the CEO of ActionCOACH, which is one of or the largest coaching company in the world, right?
Yes, sir. Yep. 80 markets, almost 1,000 coaches. Yep.
That is insane, man. And you're the CEO. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
One of. I'll say one of. There's a few of us, but yeah, one of.
One of the you're the CEO of the United States market.
Most of the US market, yeah.
That's crazy. Still unbelievable. So I started this show. It's been almost exactly 3 years now. And I started it to help people have a breakthrough in life. And when I started it, I was stuck. So I did it for selfish reasons, but I just, look, I know that by hearing other people's stories of how they got stuck and they got unstuck, that's healing for other people, man. And that's why I love doing this. So Don, let's start with where you were born and raised.
Yeah. And as when you and I were chatting a couple minutes ago, yeah, boy, that's going like way back. But yeah, I was born in New York City. I'm second generation, I guess you would say. So my grandparents and my great grandparents came from Europe and Eastern Europe. Through Ellis Island in New York City.
There was a New York City back then?
Yeah. Hey, actually, now I like the city. And part of my story I'll tell you later. But yeah, I like the city now. When we were living there, it wasn't such a great place to live. But
wow.
Yeah. And we moved when. Go ahead.
Yeah, what part of the city were you born in?
We were in Queens.
Okay.
My parents were born and raised in Brooklyn, and I guess the upscale or the step up was to move to Queens.
Nice.
And then the long plan was to get out of the city. Back then, it was just the city was transitioning in a bad way, and the goal of many people in my father's generation was to be able to get out of the city. So
okay.
we eventually did. I actually still live in central Pennsylvania, basically where most of my life we spent in central PA. My father was in the Navy.
Okay.
During the war, he came out and very much blue collar experience. Went to night school to get some college, but ended up being a civilian employee for the Navy. Worked in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And in the 60s, they were determining that there was too much concentration, so many bridges across so many rivers and waterways, that there was too much concentration in the city. So they started moving some people out. And my dad's department was moved from New York City to central Pennsylvania.
And like, okay, so that had to be a like, how old were you when you moved to Central PA from New York City?
Yeah, I was 10.
Okay.
And I love to tell the story because obviously I at the time I had a very strong New York accent.
Yeah,
And
somebody just said that. Look, I
yeah,
know.
yeah, and that's right. You can lose it as a kid and you don't lose it as an adult often. And so my mother never really lost it, but I'll never forget, you talk about things you remember. I'll never forget first week of school. We had to read. They went around desk to desk. Every kid had to read from a book, and I was way in the back of the room. Last name S. You got stuck in the back of the room alphabetically, and so I got my opportunity to read, and there was a pause, and literally, I kid you not, the teacher looked around all the other kids down the aisle and said, "Listen to this." Said, "You're not from around here, are you?"
Oh, jeez.
The new kid in the class, the new
What
kid in
the
the
heck?
school, already with the accent thing going on, and the teacher highlights, "You're not from around here, are you?" So that was my welcome to Central Pennsylvania.
That's really good. Teachers. Some teachers. I
Uh,
mean,
she was a
dude.
lovely lady, but it wasn't what I needed. It was not the confidence builder that I needed. So anyway, we overcame.
Yeah. So it had to be a pretty big shock though for a 10-year-old.
It was. I had never, I'd always walked to school, in the city. My brother would walk me to school. Now I had to get on a school bus. Never had to make friends. So now suddenly I'd had to make friends. I remember a kid across the street. In fact, he's going to be in town this week. His older sister passed away, and but anyway, I remember trying to meet him. He was out playing in his yard. I was out playing in my yard, and it's like, I'm doing something stupid to try to get his attention.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
yeah, it was quite a shock. It was quite a shock.
So you, I'm assuming you eventually blended in, you made friends, you went to school there, high school. Did you, and this is in Harrisburg, right?
It's in
Area
the
or
Yeah, it's in the Harrisburg area. Yeah, it's actually the city's divided, or the area is divided by a river. So I'm on the west side of town, so to speak, more suburb than city. But yeah.
my buddy Mark Gassert said he grew up in Lebanon, PA. So
Yep.
that's
Well, I'm
not,
in more of the Camp Hill, Mechanicsburg. In fact, when we told people we were moving to Camp Hill, they actually thought we were like moving on base or something. They thought it was some they thought it was some military thing.
wow. So and there's somebody joining us from hell.
Oh, great.
Joaquin. Joaquin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, we're close to Paradise, Pennsylvania, and Intercourse, Pennsylvania. So, and there's a couple of other ones I won't even mention that are really, really weird. I won't go public with. But that's sort of central Pennsylvania.
That's funny. We actually did a show, Glenn Morshower and I, one night. We zoomed in on the map because we were talking about people bringing up the weirdest area or weirdest, and we brought up Intercourse, Pennsylvania. There's some unbelievable names over
It's
there.
down there. There's a few right around. Do that some other time privately, and you'll see
Yeah, right.
some other really, 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 really
Right.
interesting.
That's so funny. But so did you end up going to college then?
I did. I did. Yeah, went all the way up through local high schools here. Went to, in fact, my wife and I talk about, I don't know why we've been talking about this recently, but yeah, she and I met in college. I went to school in Pennsylvania. I remember wanting to go to a particular school for accounting. It was local, but it was a private school, very expensive, and candidly, I couldn't afford to go. And so I went to a state school, and ended up paying for 50 to 60% of it myself. My parents did all that they could to pay as much as they could. I ended up funding probably 50 to 60% of my education. So walked away with no debt or anything of that nature. Worked my butt off every summer, every vacation, worked double shifts. I was putting in 60, 70 hours a week in the summers to make enough money to stay in school.
Wow, good for you. And I thought you were going to say I made the smartest decision of my life and drove over to Ohio State University.
No, but it's funny you say that, because my daughter went for 3 years to Ohio State and then finished up at Liberty.
Wow.
But it was my goal that that my kids that I would be able to pay for my kids' education. And that was awesome. One of my sort of bucket list or lifelong goals. And but I made a deal, and I think this is an important lesson for anybody that's got teenage kids. I made a deal with my kids, and my oldest, my daughter, I'm not quite sure she believed it, but she figured it out, and my son got it after seeing what his sister went through. But I said to him, I'm there, look, there's a lot of stuff you can do, and if for some reason you pick a school that mom and dad didn't fully, save for or invest for, I'll pay any student loans that or any kind of funding that has to be repaid. I will pay for it as long as you do your job, and that is graduate in 4 years, graduate on time. And my daughter did not. So she ended up with a little bit of debt that she had to pay after she did graduate. And my son actually ended up getting some academic scholarships and stuff while he was a student athlete, and he has no debt, nothing that he had to end up paying off. So I highly recommend anybody that has teenage kids, because you can do the loans and the grants and FAFSA and all kinds of good stuff that you don't actually have to cash flow it all out up front. Yeah. But I recommend having some kind of a deal with your kids, because even, and I'm not a knock against Ohio State, but in their freshman indoctrination or orientation, they actually told the kids, "Oh, don't worry too much if you fail a couple classes. We have a couple of things that are like free, where we won't give you an F. It won't stay on your transcripts." I went, "What? You're setting these kids up to go 4.5 or 5 years anyway." And that was not the deal with my kids. So.
Wow. Well, you met my wife. She's on here. She says hello. So she went to a private college, and her dad, her dad, this is what my parents and I had the same deal. Yeah. So
we were fortunate that we were able to pay for all the kids' stuff. It was, you look back, and I know this show, Ken, is to help other people. I look back in life, and there's pockets or things you go through, and one of them I felt I've done well was investing to be sure I could meet that goal of the kids going to a school, and we kind of gauged it as a Penn State, kind of an in-state school. Penn State's not technically part of the Pennsylvania University system, so it's even more expensive. But we geared toward and told the kids, we'll pay for this. Now, Ohio State, out of state, was much higher, and my son going to a private, he went to also to a private school, but we were still able to afford all of it for the kids. So one of the things I did well.
That's so awesome, man. So awesome. Colleen said her daughter got a full ride. That's awesome.
Hey, Colleen. I know Colleen, actually, working with Colleen on a couple things. So
you know Colleen?
I do.
She's a client of mine. She's a dear friend of mine. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So Colleen is absolutely amazing. So you let's go back to when you graduated from college. What was your degree in? Accounting?
No, it actually was in general business. I was going to go the route of what was it called? Gosh, I can't remember what it was called back then. Sort of what computer science. Actually, it probably was computer science. It was probably even back then called computer science. And so I was going down that path. I made that switch from actually being a math major at one point in time into the business school, wanted to be into computer science. An advisor said, "Oh yeah, we'll kind of move things around here and still let you graduate on time." Well, I couldn't keep up with all of the courses, So somewhere in there, I went what was called general business management, and I did graduate on time, but it was really a general degree with kind of the equivalent of an econ minor, if you will. So, but stayed in business. Stayed in business.
So you get out of college, you graduate college, and what you took over as CEO of ActionCOACH?
Yeah. It was funny. I was in a fraternity, and it was a very difficult. The mid to late 70s, it was very difficult to get employment. And yeah, Mark, absolutely. Hack is a great school. Wished I'd have realized that back in the day. But it was very, very difficult to get employment out of college. And the crazy things fraternity brothers do. We would post our rejection letters on a wall.
Oh my God. Wow.
So, you were interviewing, sent back in the day, there was no Monster or Career Builders or Indeed, or, so it was all kind of on your own. But when we would get rejection letters, which everybody was getting a lot of, we would put them on the wall in the fraternity house. Wow. But I was able to get a job out of school working with a small business owner. Didn't pan out, but then I started to get into the bigger corporations, the back in the day, Burroughs, which is now, I can't think of who they are today, but they transitioned into a different company, and then the 3M company, and then also an electronics manufacturer by the name of AMP Incorporated, which today is TE Connectivity. They were bought and so forth and so on. So
you worked for 3M?
I did.
Wow.
One of their divisions.
What is it? Minnesota Machining and Mining?
Mining and Manufacturing.
Manufacturing. Okay.
Yeah. Great company. Again, I don't look back at any kind of regrets, but I left because we were anticipating that within 18 months to 2 years that the division I was in was going to have such a shakeup. I figured I was going to be out of a job. And I was correct in the shakeup was going to eliminate my job. What I missed was 3M was such a good company that they actually had job fairs across the company. They felt they had hired you. You were such a strong employee. They did not want to lose their people. And so everybody who wanted a job got a job. And so that was really pretty cool for them. I still landed in a great place. I still landed exactly where I wanted to be. So it worked out in the long run. So
that's incredible. So here you were on the how do I say it? I couldn't have done it personally, but you were on the corporate hamster wheel.
Yes. I say I always talk about I was climbing the ladder, and every once in a while I went, uh-oh, maybe it's on the wrong wall. Maybe I've got the ladder up against the wrong wall. But and actually it was really, really good for me. I think I always had in the back of my mind that hey, I'd love to own my own business someday, but what would I do? And I just never had the catalyst to go out and do anything about that dream or that little thing that was in the back of my head. So yeah, we had great opportunity. I did business in over 30 countries. My family and I got to live in Japan twice. I was selected as one of the top executives of the future, so I got quite a bit of additional training and leadership skill set development. And then one day, a company came in and made a hostile takeover to acquire this $7 or $8 billion corporation that we were. And somebody eventually, the supposed white knight came in and rescued us, supposedly. Wow. And so I survived all of that. A lot of horror stories of colleagues who lost their job. There was a colleague who literally had arrived in China to run the Chinese operations there, and literally got an email that said, "You're fired. Start packing everything up and going home," even though they had just got there.
Like just the same day, or
well, I think it might have been actually the same day, but I softened up the story and said it was the same week. So
I'll soften up the story. Oh my God.
yeah. So
You
it was
moved to
crazy.
China. So like you move all your stuff to China.
Yeah, his stuff actually hadn't even arrived. When you do an international move,
Yeah.
a bunch of stuff goes into a container, goes on a boat, and like 6 weeks later, it shows up. So his stuff hadn't even arrived.
Oh my
so
God.
it was crazy times. I survived all of that, but I recognized that I was no longer a player there. So that was my catalyst to take the bull by the horn. I felt so strongly that I was not going to be one of those people that one day looked up from their computer screen to see the HR manager and the security guard escorting me out of the building. Because sometimes, not necessarily in that company, but I've heard a lot of downsizing stories where literally that's what they do. They go office to office and escort people out.
That's what happened. That's what happened to my wife.
Yep.
She was VP of marketing of a $500 million company, and they eliminated her department.
Yeah. So I was just felt very, very strongly. I was not going to let that happen to me.
Wow.
And so I used all of that sort of negative energy, if you will, to turn it into something that I could control my own destiny, that I could go out. And that was the very first time I owned my own business. I was actually the very first franchise partner for ActionCOACH in the United States. So you don't get to meet too many people like me, candidly, not bragging or anything, but how many people, even sometimes, meeting the founder of a company or some of the first people in. Well, as I said, we were Australian based at the time. And I came in as an area developer or a master franchisee. So I actually started my first business in 2000. And as I said, use that whole corporate experience to say, I want to change the culture around me. I want to take control of my own destiny. I want to be responsible for my success and not have someone above me be responsible for my success.
So, let's talk about the beginning stage of that, because I've started many companies. I have no idea what it's like to start with a nice bank account. Like I've always started with just hitting the door-to-door grassroots, and so you go from I would say, I don't know, you had to have had, I would imagine, a 6-figure income and this cushy job. Maybe not cushy, but my wife always says, never, ever, ever underestimate the value of a weekly paycheck. So, right. So, but you go from this corporate job where you have a guaranteed income, and you're like, I can't. And so you're going to buy a franchise. That franchises aren't free. So you're buying the very first master franchise of ActionCOACH. What in God's name made you think you were qualified to do that?
Well, when I look back at it, I go, "What were you thinking, Shin?" But I did. I took about 5 or 6 months. I actually worked with a career coach to help me determine what were my skill sets and what really drove me, what were my passions, what were my motivations. So I worked for a number of months with someone guiding me through all of that, and I felt I needed to be in a people business, and I needed to be in an environment where I could give. I needed to be in an environment that I could contribute and impact people's lives. But also build businesses. There was always a piece of me. In fact, in my corporate days, I had the opportunity for about 3-4 years to build a small department, and we got it up to $20-25 million, and that was like a small business within the big business. And so that was exciting. That really motivated me, but it had to really still had to be in that people segment. So when I found Action Coach, it was, honestly, it was a no-brainer. The master franchise model allows you to really build something beyond yourself, and I had a greater impact. My goal was not so much for me to carry a client load of coaches, or pardon me, of businesses that I could coach, but rather find other people that wanted to carry those client loads and help them develop their clientele. And in that way, I could impact far more businesses in Pennsylvania, and then eventually I acquired the rights to New Jersey as well. So I ended up, and by the way, just full disclosure, I ended up cashing in. The investment was middle to upper six figures over the years. I cashed that all out handsomely, nicely in 2015. Was away from Action Coach for about 3 years, and then the founder of the company asked me to come back in this executive role. So,
wow, dude. So, but here's the thing: you were the first one.
Like I said, what was I thinking, Ken?
No, I'm. I mean, they must have had one heck of a sales pitch.
Honestly, it was just knowing I was in the right place. And this is something, because I still do, and when I was away, I did this really kind of this career coaching, where it's often called franchise brokering or franchise consulting, and I still work with people who are referred to me, and so it was really, and now the career coach kind of helped me. I do a lot more extensive work with folks than she did with me, or in a different way. But it was really knowing I was in the right place. It was really feeling the passion. That's why I said it. Like I said, I'm not really that big a risk oriented kind of a guy. Hey, I'm working for a Fortune 200 size companies. That's not risky, And although in today's day and age, candidly, with the way corporations shift people around and downsize this quarter and hire people next quarter, if you're of a certain age, you're pretty. It's often risky having that, believe it or not, having that paycheck from the bigger companies anyway. So I just knew, Ken, that I was in the right place. I was excited about this. I actually even left early enough that I lost a $45,000 annual bonus. I walked away from. If I'd have stayed like an extra 4 months, 5 months, I would have gotten this bonus. And so you think you
knew that?
Oh yeah. Well, I didn't know exactly what it was going to be, but the company was having a good year. I knew there was a bonus there. I wouldn't say that I knew it was that much, but I knew there was a bonus there. So I just felt I could have a greater impact and make more money by starting the business quicker, sooner.
Yeah. Wow. So that's impressive. I can relate. By the way, I can relate. So many people have said to me, "What were you thinking?" or "What are you thinking?" So I get it. I think that you say I'm not much of a risk taker, but dude, that's a huge risk. That's a big risk.
Again, it was calculated. I brought my wife into the mix because I wouldn't do something without her support. And this is something I encourage everybody. You if you're married, you need that spousal support. If you're not married, your circle of friends. Now, don't let those people hold you back, because they won't always envision the dream that you have.
Right.
So it's got to be a balance and look for the people that will support you if you found the right thing and you're following the dream. So some people will not see that vision because they don't have it for themselves, so they're not going to see it for you. So there's a kind of a balance in there. But anyway, my wife and I talked a lot about it. We said, especially again being the first one in the U.S., we kind of said, look, if this is a bust, in 2 or 3 years, can we rebound? So we had an amount of money we were willing to put in, and a number of years we were willing to wait to see it turn around, and those things all worked out. So obviously it was the right thing to do.
But I mean, something to keep in mind, because people don't, people see, I've heard Grant Cardone say this, people don't see all of the, like, how many free speeches did Zig Ziglar give? I forget. It was like 1,500 or something insane. Right.
Yep.
And so people don't, people go, oh my gosh, look at Don Schin. He's an overnight success. But you don't, like, there were 20 years of like, pulling your hair out, literally. Look.
Well, I went in, it's funny because I work with companies now, again, in addition to the work I do with ActionCOACH, but I work with other companies to franchise their business. It's one of the other things I do. If they have a concept, is it franchisable? And I was recently near you. I was in Lancaster, Ohio, working with someone. And one of the things we talked about is, well, your industry is well known, and so you're not going to have to explain to anybody what you do. But back 21 years ago, when I started as the coach, in essence, and talking about the coaching industry, there were no coaches back in those days. That's why I use the phrase, I work with a career coach. I don't think that's the way she really billed herself, was maybe a little bit of a life coach. But coaching was like, what do you mean coaching? And so we had to create the market here, and educate people, and then sign them up, both as franchise partners as well as clients. So that first 5, 6, 7, 8 years of a new industry, you've got to recognize, you've got to educate first, and then make the sale.
I think that's the scariest part. When I started my web development company, people were like, looking at, I think maybe we should get a website, so there were customers. I knew there were customers. You're going into something where you're the very first guy signing up for this new thing here in the US. And it wasn't like you had people banging on your door going, hey dude, go start a coaching business and invest high 6 figures.
But I will say, from the risk factor, Ken, to be transparent, there were almost 100 franchise partners elsewhere in the world,
right? But not in the U.S.
But not in the U.S. So it definitely was a stretch. But at least I could look at and because I had global contacts, I could look at the Canadian market, I could look at the Australian market, the New Zealand market, and I actually had a friend, hey, look this company up for me, will you? And he literally went and physically visited them in Australia to make sure they were legit, to make sure it wasn't some boiler room kind of a thing.
Wow.
And but I had those kinds of contacts, so I could flesh out the concept and then take the risk to say, will it work here?
It's just impressive. I personally, I think it's really impressive to say, yes, I'll invest 6 figures into this business that has 0 customers even interested. They don't even know it exists. like that's Steve Jobs level stuff right there.
No,
it's just impressive. So you said that you did. Now, what year did you start the ActionCOACH business?
2000.
Okay.
And then I ended up starting part of Pennsylvania, ended up acquiring the rights to the whole state, then bought somebody out actually in New Jersey. So ended up technically franchise terms with 3 territories, or three franchise units, and sold them in 2015.
Yeah. Wow. And so what did you do in 2015? You got out of ActionCOACH. Where'd you go from there?
Yeah. Again, total transparency. I had started a telemarketing company, an appointment setting company for my franchise partners, and then we were relatively successful inside the ActionCOACH community in the U.S. and in Canada.
Wow.
And but in the long run, that didn't work out. Let me put it this way: depending upon your measurements, we found a niche in hiring people. We actually 80% of our staff were people that that either had drug problems and or had been incarcerated. And so it turned out to be a second chance kind of ministry for us.
Wow.
And so because they were good on the phones, candidly, based on their life stories, they could, they could put up with somebody swearing at them or hanging up on them. That was minimal abuse, compared to what they had been through in life. But they brought a lot of problems. They brought a lot of baggage with them. It was difficult to keep them working, and they weren't consistently showing up. So I started that company. It did not. That was my intent for that and the franchise brokering and the franchise consulting to really be my future. And just didn't pan out that way. But the kind of the more pure consulting and the franchise brokerage has really worked well for me. And then, as I said, Brad Sugars, the founder and owner of ActionCOACH, called me back. He needed somebody to walk right into that CEO role. And there's probably nobody around that knew the people already, so I had credibility in the franchise organization, as well as understood franchising and could step right into that role and be successful. So that worked out well, and that's where majority of my time goes today.
That's amazing, man. And of course, I've heard of Brad Sugars. Is it with an S on the end? Sugars?
It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I've heard of him. I know, I think Jeffrey Gitomer's friends with him, right?
They are. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So.
And when I mentioned the measurement, Ken, as to what success is, the business itself was never dramatically successful financially for us, but where it was successful was, again, not trying to be egotistical or anything, but where I think it was successful was in the impact that we made on people's lives. I ran the business differently. I ran it from a faith-based, we would have an open, morning kind of huddle. Anybody who wanted to join in and a short prayer to open up and a little bit of sharing to open up our day was allowed to do that. As I said, we gave people chances who couldn't get jobs. And, one of the people that was my sales manager, actually is now a motivational speaker and author. And he goes into schools now, talks about kids making choices every day. Awesome. And another gentleman I know came back one day, and I didn't quite recognize him at first. He was in a dealership, a car dealership, mechanic's shirt. And he said, and he was telling me, hey, I never would have gotten that job unless I had a little bit of employment experience with you gave me, Don. He got married. Both of these guys got married.
Wow.
So those, I believe that from a faith base, that we were wildly successful because of the week-to-week impact we had on people's lives. They'd been treated in ways that they'd never been treated before, or not in their recent lives. And then some of them really took advantage of it. Many of them didn't take advantage of it, but that was on them. That wasn't on us. And many of them, like I said, had incredible success. So,
see, that's what life's about right there, man. I really, you can't take the money with you, but you can leave a legacy of the people that you've helped. That's amazing.
Yeah, and that's something that's really been on my heart, Ken, in the last couple of years, and has been what I call a generational legacy impact, or living your life in a way consciously and intentionally to make a difference in the lives of those people that come after you. And I think of my grandparents. I mentioned, they came as immigrants through Ellis Island Immigration Center in New York. And I think about, my grandfather had not decided to come to America, if he had decided to just stay in Austria-Hungary and build a life there, obviously I wouldn't be here today in a little bit of a humorous standpoint, but I, all of the lives that we were able to help through this second chance ministry type business would never have been impacted in the way their lives would have been impacted. So to me, in living intentionally, living in a way that's going to have an impact. One of the things I say today is I don't only want my grandchildren to remember me and the great experiences that we have together. I want their children to know who I am, and not so much, again, not egotistically. When I say this, I always get concerned that it's self-centered. I don't mean it in that way. I mean it in a way that they know what I stand for, that they grow up knowing what I stand for. So
that's amazing. My wife's father, I think he was second generation Hungarian. Did you know that?
Wow. No,
Did
I
you
don't
guys
think
talk about that?
Jill and
Yeah.
I apologize, Jill, if we did, but I don't think we did.
Second, or she's on here. She'll second or third. I don't remember, but yeah. So that's and I don't think that's egotistical at all. And even if it is, so what? Because I think that if more people live their life in the direction of how am I going to impact generations to come, and how are my grandchildren's children going to remember me, in a positive way, I think we'd be in a much better world.
Yeah, it's funny. I've read this somewhere. This isn't my quote, but I've read where people plan more for a 1-week vacation than they plan for their lives. And I just go like, oh, you got to be kidding me,
It's true.
But we don't stop, and we're just not intentional. Most people just are not intentional about how they're living. The analogy I always give is it's kind of like being in a boat on the water with no oars, and just letting life or the life and the current and the flow happen to you. Yeah.
His father came from Hungary when he was a child. There you go.
Yep. Very cool.
Yeah. And you're right, man. I mean, all the greats talk about it. Jim Rohn and Zig Ziglar and you. I literally just published a little book/journal a few days ago, called the 10-Minute Mastery Journal. That it's literally, because people don't map out their days, man. They don't map out their days, and then they get to the end of the day to go to bed, and they're like, what did I do today? I reacted to everything instead of being intentional. I love that you just said that, man. So and this kind of leads into the one question I love to ask, and I always ask at the end of the show, but we're not at the end yet, but I'm going to ask anyway. What, in your opinion, in your experience too, okay, fear's the number one answer, so you got to do better. What do you think holds people back from two things in life? Number one, real financial success. And number two, real happiness and freedom in life. And listen, I think money and happiness are related, contrary to what a lot of people say. You take it, unless we all lived on an island and lived off coconut milk or something, but like, you take a broke, depressed person and hand them $1 million. I promise you, they're going to be happier. Even if it's for a fleeting moment, they're going to be happy. So what do you think holds people back?
Yeah. And my dad used to, he's remembered within the family by a lot of one-liners. And one of the things he used to say, rich or poor, it's always nice to have money. Right. But I think on the real financial success, I think a big part of it is recognizing where your money is going. And this is important in business. It's knowing your numbers. We always say that ActionCOACH has taught that it's knowing your numbers of your business. Yeah. And I don't mean like you could go look them up, but I mean knowing them, being able to have them at the tip of your tongue, top of mind. And I think personally as well, it's important to know your numbers, and then and know where your money is going. And then I think it's what's priority in your life as to where you're going to put that money. And again, I'm not going to remember the specific numbers on what I'm going to say here, but if you invested at least even as little as 10% a year of your income, and you did that in a disciplined fashion, deliberately, year after year, you'll be a millionaire. And so I think it's important to be disciplined with some savings and investment, as well as disciplined in knowing where your numbers go. It's interesting. I'll pitch somebody else's book here. A guy by the name of David Bach. Just reading some of his books. Actually, Joe's wife gave me this suggestion, and it's Smart Couples Plan to Be Rich or something of that nature. But it just David Bach, and he goes in very, very deliberately and says that you don't need a lot of money necessarily to retire comfortably, because he also wrote another book, I think, called The Latte Factor. Look at where your money goes. I remember my wife, before she changed jobs, she was working in an office and would go to the office, and she knew, I mean, everybody was making about the same amount of money, and it wasn't terribly a lot. But the younger generation would come in with every day with a latte from Starbucks, or their breakfast from McDonald's. And boy, don't even have to sacrifice terribly. But if you cut that in half and took that amount of money, that's going to be $100 to $200 a month that everybody could find and invest. And things like, if you do work for a company that's got a 401k plan. I just had this conversation over Easter with my son to make sure, are you maximizing your 401k that they allow you to invest because they match? It's like an automatic 50% you're going to make on your investment if they match your 401k. So it's stuff like that I think makes a huge difference on people really being financially successful. And I don't think they have to be making huge amounts of money. They just have to know where their numbers are going. I think the other thing about freedom and happiness is you've got to know who you are and who you're supposed to be, and measure yourself based on who you feel you're supposed to be, based on your purpose, and not always measure yourself solely on, am I wealthy? Or is my bank account big? Or is my net worth high? I'm not saying those things are bad. I'm just saying the how you measure yourself. And this is something I've come to grips with, having owned that telemarketing company that was not really successful. I started to look at, how am I measuring myself, Ken? And when it was the number of lives that I didn't impact, but the number of lives that God allowed me to impact, the number of lives that came across my path, that I could either be just one link in the chain or be the one that helped them across the finish line. That, to me, your measurements on your success is going to be one where you can get up every day and go do it and have joy and have happiness. So
see, I think that you were the one impacting them. I know you don't. And here's what. Look, you could have been changing oil at a Jiffy Lube or something. Instead, you're out here doing your thing. You're doing what your heart led you to do. And I think that people have a tendency of not listening to their heart.
mm-hmm.
and not, or they hear it, but they don't follow it. Right.
That's true. No, that's very, very true. And then the other thing, I'll just mention is, I think our disciplines, like I work hard. I have a morning ritual and discipline that I will not break. And part of it is manages my energy for the day, which is, a lot of time people talk about managing their time. I work to manage my energy levels during the day. And it starts out, with a workout. It starts out in what I call my prayer closet. So spiritually, I'm getting connected. And honestly, Ken, when I don't do that in a day, I can tell, at the end of the day, I can tell I skipped my workout, or I can tell I skipped my my prayer closet time.
Yeah.
I really can. I mean, it's noticeable.
Yeah.
And so I think people are successful based on the rituals, the habits they build. Your habits make up 80 or 90% of your life. You know, what you're going to do every day is based on the habits you've created, bad or good.
Amen. Dan Altmeyer wants to know what your connection to the Washington Nationals is.
It's a was, and I was a chaplain for their AA affiliate here in Harrisburg. So for 7 seasons, 7 years, I was a chaplain here in town, and that was, again, it was a great opportunity. You know, we saw kids making no money there, and kids that were millionaires already, you know, by the time they were 18, and so I was able to pour into their lives. Sunday mornings when they were home, got to do a little preaching on Sunday mornings when they were home, but also had the opportunity to pour into them one-on-one. We would get the guys together either in small groups, or I would even, you know, get together with guys one-on-one. And then we were also what's called a host family. So actually we had players staying with us because they're very transient, so to speak, at that level of baseball. So they never know when they're going to be called up or pulled down in the system. And so they can't really get apartments. Hotels are too expensive. So they have this loose system of host families. So we host for a number of years. We hosted some of the kids.
That's amazing, man. Wow. I didn't know that you were a chaplain. Wow.
I was. Yep. And I speak Japanese too, so nobody ever knows that either.
Watashi wa nihongo ga skoshi hanasemasu.
Sugoi.
I worked at Honda for almost 3 years, man, and I had some Japanese friends. That's literally the only thing I can say is I speak a little Japanese.
Oh, very cool. I've been to the Honda plant and met the president of Honda US many 20-something years ago.
I got to meet Mr. Honda before he died. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That is cool. That is really cool.
It was pretty cool. But yeah, and I love the Japanese culture. It's amazing. It's amazing. Look, Jill said no end to Don's talents. No kidding. No kidding.
I feel very uncomfortable always saying this stuff. So I just my mentor, one of my mentors, other than say in addition to Jeffrey, is a gentleman by the name that's long passed by the name of Charlie Tremendous Jones. And Charlie and Zig and Roan were always a lot of the guys that were out there. And Charlie, again, for kind of faith-based reasons, Charlie was also always very concerned about him getting the spotlight. You know, everything I have and any talents or any experiences I've had, I just feel that God opened those doors. God gave me those talents to be used for His purposes. So I always feel I just awkward, you know, if the spotlight's on me. So, dude,
I think that's what this show's about, man. And I think that like Jill says, you should be proud of your gifts and talents because you are, man, you're a hidden gem. I didn't even know about you. And it blows my mind, man. I just, like, if anybody said, do you know the CEO of ActionCOACH? I would have said, yeah, it's that other guy, that Brad Sugar guy. So I didn't even know. That's amazing. So Jamie Green is on, by the way. She said hello. So
hey, Jamie.
We love Jamie. So,
I do love Jamie.
So, you know, I'll tell you something. I didn't go to college. I grew up in a much different environment. And in fact, in 12th grade, they said you didn't get a biology credit in 10th grade and you need that to graduate. And I said, well, that's stupid. Why? And I'm never dissecting a frog again. And they're like, well, it's just the rules. And I'm like, well, your rules are stupid and I'm out of here. So I walked out and I had taken trig, analytic geometry, calculus, aced all of that. I was really good at math. But I just said, this is stupid. I'm not coming back for a whole year for one credit. And so I walked out and I realized after I quit Honda, because I went to work at Honda pretty much right out of high school. I realized how much I hated working in a factory. There are no windows in that place, by the way, none when you're working on the line. And so I was like, I got to get into sales. So I did. And I started studying Zig and Brian Tracy and all the greats and Jeffrey eventually. And, you know, I'll tell you something. I think that there's been moments in my life owning businesses where it was difficult. And I remember one particular day, one of my employees comes in and said, and it was right after Jill and I opened up our first office. And he says, there's a guy looking in the windows of your SUV in the parking lot. And I'm like, well, tell him to get the heck out of here. You're bigger than I am, dude. And, and he goes, I would, but he has it blocked with his tow truck. And I was like, oh, and dude,
Oh,
I mean, you want to
no.
talk about a day. I honestly, it was the most humiliating day of my life, having my car towed in front of my employees, and
Yep.
there was nothing wrong with my car. So, you know, for the people who are, and I think 2020 presented a lot of challenges for people. The suicide rates skyrocketed. You know, people just have been through a lot of struggles in the last year or so, and for those people who are barely hanging on to life, they've tried everything in their business. They don't know which way to go. What do you say to the people who are just barely hanging on, Don? Like if they called you up and said, my car just got repoed, my electric's being shut off tomorrow, I don't know what to do, I'm freaking out, and I need help. What would you say to them?
Yeah, wow, that's a tough question in 30 seconds or a minute that you probably have left.
No, go as long as you need to go. Yeah.
I would say something that hit me, and again, I'm not going to remember the guy's name, but there's a gentleman, I think he's Canadian. No, he might be even, I think might be Australian. He was, his mother took one of these morning sickness drugs that later was found to create create birth defects. He was born with no arms, and no limb. I think he's got like a little toe or
Yeah.
something. It's just
Nick Volovich.
Yes. I was at a couple of Nick's events over the course of life, and what struck me was that, and I try to look at when I'm have been at my bottoms, you know, not able to pay my bills, having to call people I owed money and try to work something out with them. I just always looked at it that my worst day, somebody hopes for my worst day. Somebody's better or best day is my worst day. And that just gives me hope to feel like I'm going to get through this, and someone else would just be tickled pink, you know, for example, to not already be out on the street, you know, thrown out of their apartment. You know, maybe I'm having trouble paying my electric bills and stuff, but somebody else has already been evicted, or they're living in the cold because the electric's always been turned off, been turned off. So I just look, I've gotten through my worst times by believing that somebody else would love to have my status where I am at the moment. And then the other thing for me is just honestly is my faith, Ken. I believe in the long run that I'm on this earth, but I'm in this world, but I'm not of this world. I believe I'm going to end up in a different place that's going to have no pain, that's going to have no sickness, that's going to have no overdue bills, and that's my hope in the long run, that I can survive this 70 or 80 or however many number of years I'm allowed to live here. I can survive anything here because my real goal is to end up in the right place for thousands of years, you know, for eternity. And so that's always my hope, is I'll get through what I'm going through here because I know in the long run I'm not going to be here forever.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing. What are some final words of hope and inspiration? You know, I have a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs that watch the show or listen to it on the podcast. What are some final words that you would would leave them with to take their business and their lives to the next level?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question. I would say be a continuous learner. If they're listening to you, they're doing things that they're trying to tap into other resources. They're trying to gain other knowledge. And so I think the most successful people I've seen are continual learners, and don't go into something, if you want to get into real estate, get some education, pick up a book on real estate, go to a seminar on real estate. If you want to flip houses, don't go in it, with your last dime before you get some education. And then the other thing, honestly, is truly the building of habits. I so strongly believe that our life, if you really look at your life, it's made up of the habits that you have, and 80 to 90, I strongly believe 80 to 90% of our life is lived through the habits we've created. And I would emphasize, if you've got bad habits, don't just try to eliminate the bad habit. It's got to be replaced with a good habit. And I've seen a lot of people, for example, try to quit smoke. I should say a lot. I've seen people try to quit smoking, and they just try to quit smoking. Well, they need to replace it with a habit of, okay, when I would have had a smoke, instead of maybe eating something, well, I'll go take a walk. Every time I replace the bad habits with good habits, and then you'll be creating a life of good habits. And so that's how I think I'd answer in the short run. That's what I think I'd answer, Ken.
What is I should have asked you this early on. What's your website address, Don?
Yeah, I've got two websites. I'll point you from a business perspective more to franchisebuildingexpert.com. That encompasses anything that I do franchise related, either helping people into a franchise, or if they think they want to franchise their business, that's the place to go. Any kind of training around franchising, that's the best website. But I also have donaldshin.com, and I've got a number of other coaching and personal blogs and things on there. So that's another one, a good one to go to as well.
Okay. Well, I've got franchisebuildingexpert.com scrolling across the bottom.
Thank you.
And where should everybody follow you on social media? Where's the best place?
That's a great question too. I do most everything right now on LinkedIn. So I'd say, connect with me on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place right now. I do have a Facebook page that is related to Franchise Building Expert. So you can find some resources there, but that's not as extensive as probably what you'll see on my LinkedIn profile.
I'm going to convince Don to join the Grow Live Academy so he can work on his social media.
I'm this close. I am this close, my friend. I am this close.
He's saving his money for it.
No, it's more a challenge of time right now. I've got the majority of my time is committed to my to ActionCOACH, where my biggest commitment is.
Right.
But I've got a number of other things. I'm doing that will pop out in the next 90 days.
Well, Don, first I feel horrible that I had to stand you up for dinner last week. Because I was like, what was I thinking, scheduling dinner on my night that I do my weekly group coaching call? But I honestly, man, I'm honored and privileged that first we got to have dinner with you when we were at the mastermind, and second that you took the time to come on here and share your wisdom and your story, and you're an amazing man. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. No, I appreciate the opportunity. It's always great to share. And my mantra in life, or mission statement, whatever you might want to call it, is to radically and relentlessly give value and impact lives for the glory of God. So this is an opportunity. I love when one of your intro slides talked about help helping us through stories. And so this just aligns with me tremendously. So this was a blessing and a real opportunity for me too, Ken. Thank you.
Wow. Thanks
For the
you.
invite.
I appreciate it. Thank you to everybody who's watched, everyone who shared this out. There are extra points for you probably in heaven or something for sharing this out. So thank you for that. I'm not speaking for God, by the way. But thank you. I appreciate it. And we will see everybody tomorrow. Don, thank you so much again.
You bet. My pleasure. Thank you, Ken.
Hang on for a minute for me. Thank you.